We have a chance now to deal with the student loan crisis, and it is a crisis. The student loan debt is $1.2 trillion, Mr. President. That's more than credit card debt. In my home state, the average amount owed by a borrower in 2012 was more than $25,000, a 65% increase from 2004. In the same time period, the number of Californians with outstanding student loan debt increased by 60%. In addition, in 2012, there were 641,000 Californians over the age of 50 who were still paying down their student loans, and more than 6.8 million people over 50 nationwide still paying off their student loans. This is a crisis that must be addressed. It is important to our nation's economy. It is important to the future of our families, to our children and our grandchildren. It is time to act. And I have to say, Senator Warren has been a tremendous leader on this. We can take an important step toward addressing this dire situation by passing Senator Warren's Bank on Students, the Emergency Loan Refinancing Act. It would help millions of Americans refinance their loans at lower interest rates, put more money in their pockets, and I have to say, it's kind of a no-brainer. When you have more money in your pocket than you had before, you're going to spend it in your communities. I am so proud to be an original co-sponsor of this legislation. Sadly, even though the federal government's the biggest student loan lender, it is making billions of dollars in profits each year, and it doesn't allow its borrowers to refinance their existing student loans when rates are low, and that is wrong. Our middle class is hurting. The New York Federal Reserve Bank and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have been warning us that student loans are acting like an anchor on our economy. Now, I have to say, again, talking about our president, when he took office, there was a crisis. We were losing 700,000 jobs a month. He has turned it around, and we are month after month now creating over 200,000 jobs, and we've restored all those jobs that we lost. But why would we keep this anchor student loan debt on our economy? For example, students can't buy cars because they have so much in student loan debt. They can't buy houses. Andrea from San Francisco writes, quote, "My boyfriend and I both have student debt. He started with $90,000. He's gotten it down to $50,000 after 10 years. I recently finished my master's and I have $56,000 in debt. This has kept us from saving for a house, purchasing a car, doing things day to day that would boost the economy, like shopping and going out to eat." And Patrick from Thousand Oaks wrote to me. He says, "I pay half of my monthly wages to cover the interest alone on my loan. Worse still, many young Americans cannot save enough to start a family." Stephanie from Pacific Grove wrote me, "We are finally starting a family in our late 30s. My husband's been paying off student loans for 10 years. This loan will cost him twice as much as he borrowed, doubling the cost of his college education. It's not fair. If the Fed sets interest rates low for everyone else, why not for students?" As Stephanie's story illustrates, student debt is not only a drag on the American economy, it's tearing at the fabric of our American dream. I read last week, Mr. President, that for the first time, a majority of people don't really believe the dream will be there for them, as it was for you, as it was for me. And, you know, when 40 million people in America are struggling with a combined $1.2 trillion in student debt, it's no wonder the American dream is elusive. I have 3.7 million Californians dealing with $97 billion in student loans. And much of these loans are stuck at outrageously high interest rates, 7, 8, 9%. And with interest rates this high, it is hard for anyone to pay off their debt. And it's really hard for recent graduates who are just launching their careers. In order to help the nearly 40 million Americans with student debt, Senate Democrats have introduced this plan with the leadership of Senator Warren. It's a simple plan. The idea is to let borrowers refinance their outstanding student loan debt. We're at a time of record low interest. I am asking, rhetorically, is it fair to charge 7, 8, 9% interest when the federal government lends money to banks at less than 1%? Listen, the people who have borrowed money to pay for college or send their child to college, they're trapped with these exorbitant interest rates. And the private student loans can even be worse. I've seen 10% and 11%. The Senate Democratic proposal would allow borrowers of both federal and private student loans to refinance from their high rates into much lower rates. The rates would be 3.86% for undergraduates, 5.41% for graduates, and 6.41% for the parents who have helped their kids. Now, those are the rates that Democrats and Republicans agreed on last year, and those are the rates that new borrowers received this past school year. But the older borrowers are stuck in these exorbitant rates, and they can't refinance. So we believe if those lower rates are good for new borrowers, why would we not allow them for those who've been stuck in this vicious cycle of these high rates? These young people, they're saddled with this debt, not because they went to the mall and bought a lot of clothes. They worked hard to learn new skills that will benefit our nation and help keep us strong. And they deserve a fair shot at saving and building a career and having a family. Matthew from Antelope, California wrote to me saying, quote, "I've never worked harder on one single goal than to be the first in my family to gain a degree in higher ed. I've been on the dean's list every semester, but the ever-present fear of paying off the thousands of dollars of interest is overwhelming, and I am struggling to see past it." And then he says, if big banks, which collapsed our financial system, are able to borrow at 0%, I don't see why students who will ultimately grow our nation cannot borrow at those same rates. And Matt from Newport Beach, California says, "I'm grateful for my college education. As a son of middle-class parents, I knew college was an investment in my future, despite the fact that I had to take out loans." He says, "I even graduated in 3 years, and I served as a resident advisor to keep costs down. However, my student loan debt is now a major expense, and it hangs over me as a working adult. It affects my ability to achieve certain life milestones, like buying a house, financing a wedding, and saving for retirement." And he says, "I support efforts to refinance loans at low interest rates comparable to those in the real estate market. Please take action. With more affordable student loans, my generation can grow this economy." Well, Matt, Matthew, and their classmates who worked so hard to achieve their dreams deserve a fair shot. And tomorrow morning, we'll have a chance to make achieving the American dream just a little bit easier for Matt and Matthew and all our struggling college students. So I stand with Matt and Matthew and Patrick and Stephanie and Andrea and the 40 million other Americans with student loans. What we're saying is simple, very, very simple. We want to give students who are trapped in those high interest rates a chance to refinance. And you know how we pay for it? By saying that those billionaires who aren't paying at least as much as their secretaries pay at least as much as that. It's called the Buffett rule. And I can't imagine a better way to pay for this than that. I urge my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, to stand with my constituents and their own constituents by voting to let us move forward to consider the Bank on Students Act. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you for the time, and I yield back my time. And I also note the absence of a quorum.